Menopause isn't just about hot flushes, which is kind of what people seem to think. It is a wide range of symptoms, most of them cognitive. It's that low mood, anxiety, depression. There is, these silent symptoms that we can't see. We're not asking for special treatment. It doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing my job. It might just mean I need some adjustments.
Welcome to the Burnout Detox Kit Podcast. I'm your host, Sophie Theen. I'm an award-winning people and culture executive, keynote speaker, coach, and the founder of the Burnout Detox Project. For more than a decade, I help companies build high-performing teams and cultures across fast-growing businesses. But behind the scenes, I was burning out over and over again. So I saw the side of success nobody talks about openly. So each week, I bring you raw conversations, expert insights that will help you navigate your toxic workplace and finally understand what success should never demand from you. So if you press play today, it means some part of you is ready for that to change. Welcome, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome, Jo, to the show today. Now, I believe you're here to talk to us about all things burnout with women specifically and what we need to know about our bodies before we let ourselves go through what some women call a repetitive burnout cycle. So welcome, Jo.
Hi, welcome, Sophie. Thank you for inviting me on.
Great, let's get into it. So you've said that energy is the most undervalued business metric, and I want to start from there. I love this because in a world that basically values hustle, energy often gets treated like it's endless. It's as if we have infinite energy in our tank, but we all know that's not true. So what made you realize that energy, especially in women, wasn't being tracked, it wasn't protected, or even respected in the workplace?
Yeah, well, obviously the subject, the main context of this podcast is about burnout, and we don't burn out because we work hard. We work out because we don't recover. So in a workplace and in society, family life, social life, there's that constant, to be on, to push through. It's something that we don't track is our energy. We just ignore when we're tired. We ignore those signs to slow down. We ignore those times to say no to commitments. We ignore those times when it's about putting ourselves first in front of other people. And managing our energy is a metric. It's the invisible driver behind everything that we put out. The more exhausted we are, the less quality of life we have, the less quality of the work we put out, the commitments we put out, how we show up for other people. So we track time, we track revenue, we track performance, but we don't track our energy. And like I said, it's this energy that determines how well we produce everything else in our life. And when we don't manage our energy, we struggle to focus, we feel drained, and we begin to lose control of our schedule. We begin to lose a grip. And, many of us, we're control freaks. We want to be in control of everything. So in order to do that, we really need to get a grip on prioritizing our energy and prioritizing our recovery, our sleep, our movement, our nutrition, our downtime, rather than just keep on pushing through. And a lot of the work that I do is with women and their menstrual cycle. And energy fluctuates throughout the menstrual cycle, yet it's just not incorporated into the workplace. A lot of women know more about the cycle on their washing machine and their dishwasher than they do about their own cycle. And not managing your energy is a recipe for burnout, but we can do that by looking at our menstrual cycle and looking at the highs and lows, the energy peaks and the energy lows of our cycle. Because when we work with it rather than against it, that's when we start to have real impact on how we show up each day. And, it's something to look at. How would your leadership change if you aligned it with your cycle? And it's about time that we started designing work around how people feel, not just what they're doing. Otherwise, we're never really going to unlock their true performance or their true potential.
And it's almost like what you're really saying is we log the hours, we bill the time, we track our output, we track our productivity and all of these great business metrics, right? But energy, we just expect it to be there. And no wonder there's so many of us that just burns out.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I did all those hours, or like, oh God, I put all those hours in. It's like we should be just going, oh yeah, I had a really good healthy working week. I had a really good, work-life balance. It's a phrase that's been around for years, but it's really important, and it's something that we shouldn't be celebrating or we shouldn't be negating. It's like, okay, I had a really healthy week. I've looked after myself and I've really enjoyed what I've done. I've really produced some good work. I've really shown up for my friends and family. And I've also managed my energy. I've rested. I've listened to my body. And it's another way of thinking about our energy and how we can utilize it and make it work for us.
So let's go into something more practical then. We want to talk about the type of leadership program that you've created. And I have found that extremely interesting because particularly targeted at the menstrual cycle, we're talking about leadership in that level as well. And you've also said that this is a program that uses the menstrual cycle as a coaching tool, which is not something I've heard of many times. It's used to teach people when to push and when to pause. So why is this so important to companies?
It's probably one of the oldest and most basic well-being strategies that you can implement. For everyone who menstruates, we have roughly 28-day cycle, a textbook cycle. And within that menstrual cycle there are three main hormones that fluctuate. And with those three main hormones, they're estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They each control the cycle at different times. And with the dominance of each and every hormone comes different insights, different energy levels, different skills that you can utilize. And it's just a really grounded understanding, connecting mind and body, of understanding how you show up, how you produce, your skills are, where they're best directed during certain phases of your cycle. Especially if you're building, leadership, or you're building a team, it's understanding when you can have really important conversations, when to step back, how to build your confidence, how to build your resilience, all around this natural energy that comes with our cycle and the different, love to call them gifts and vulnerabilities. So at each phase of our cycle, we're given different gifts, our strengths, but we have vulnerabilities where there's great learning. So there's never really a bad time of your cycle. We're kind of we're so sort of miseducated on our cycle, but actually every part of your cycle holds great opportunity for growth and development, and also great opportunity for rest and recharging and managing your energy.
I mean, just hearing you say that sentence, that there's nothing bad about the cycle. We just need to learn about our cycle better so that we can learn how to use the energies at the right time. That has immediately given me a sense of relief because it almost feels like my inner soul is heard, right? I don't ever want to feel uncomfortable where, we can go into this topic later, but I don't ever want to feel uncomfortable raising my hand or just saying, look, I'm really sorry. I used to pull a lot of hours throughout the week, but these next 2 days, I just don't have the energy that I usually will have because of what's going on with my body, right? These are all natural and we should accept that. But how uncomfortable it is for me to even say that out loud and to find it to be a reason for an excuse, right? Can I be excused for hard work? It almost seems to feel that way. So it's really interesting what you say here. As you say, it's not common. It's not a common toolkit that employers use to support their leadership team. I can only imagine how many skeptics you come across. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone. And second, I just want to say there was one thing I'm really passionate about is that women stop apologizing for having their cycle. So you sort of said there, I'm really sorry, I've worked really hard for the next couple of days. It's like we need to get this conversation into culture. We need to get this conversation into everyday norms. So, we pull away from having to explain or having to apologize, but actually it's a really valid reason why you want to slow down for a couple of days. And there doesn't have to be this sort of big conversation around it. It's just like, oh, okay, I get that. But I know that in those 2 days when you're rebuilding your energy, when you're resting, because it takes an awful lot of energy for the body to bleed, you're actually still going to be hugely productive. There's a lot of work that we can do around that time when we're resting. It doesn't, just because it doesn't be active physical work, we can still be hugely productive if we change our workload to mirror and reflect that area of our cycle. So sorry, I just get that in there. But for the skeptics, it's like anything. This is new. This is new for an awful lot of businesses. It's new for an awful lot of women. I'm now 55, I'm post-menopause, but I didn't start working with my cycle until my late 40s. So, it's new information to a lot of people. We've used it on a spiritual level. We use our cycle to prevent or to get pregnant, but actually using it to really work for us. It's a real gift. It's a real tool we've been given. And I just say, give it a go. It doesn't cost you anything. Just give it a go. Just try it. What's the worst that can happen? We can spend so much money on external tools to make us into better leaders, to manage our well-being. But actually, this is something that we've been gifted, but we've just been miseducated about it for so long and seen it as an inhibition rather than a true tool that we can use to manage our mental and physical well-being.
I mean, very well said, Joe. And also thank you for calling that out, because I'm very used to apologizing or saying sorry seem like an excuse that I'm not working hard enough. In fact, I have personally been told that whenever I'm feeling a little bit more emotional throughout my cycle, I would be called as someone who's too personal or perhaps too soft. Maybe it's an important meeting for me to attend. I have to muster up the courage, but my body is failing me at the same time. I just need rest. I can't keep pushing. It just feels like there's so many understated misunderstandings about how the body is naturally reacting to certain circumstances.
And it's not failing you, Sophie. It's talking to you. It's trying to communicate with you and you're ignoring it. And it's like it's giving you all these signs. One of the very basic signs that our body is talking to us is when we bleed, and it's asking us to rest. Now, obviously, in today's world, we can't all go to bed for a couple of days. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to drink tea. I'm going to read my book. Wonderful. I'm going to recover. That doesn't happen. But what we can do is implement strategies around that time so that we can come into our bleeds. We can allow ourselves that time to rest because we've not got a pile of work that needs to be done in a certain time. We're managing our workload. We're managing our responsibilities so we can allow ourselves some downtime where maybe our workload does involve looking at data. It does involve reading. It does involve going through our emails. It's stuff that takes less of our energy rather than the real high stuff that we might have to do during the day. It means that we bank our sleep. The week before our period, we really look at how we're sleeping. We really look at what we're eating. We really look at our social calendar, and we start to manage our well-being so that we can slow down, rest and recharge, because once our period has finished, once we come to the end of our bleed, our estrogen starts to rise, our energy starts to rise, our motivation, our creativity, all of that starts to rise, and we start to feel much more outward. And that's the time that we can start doing these much more energetic tasks. And it's about planning it. It's about bringing your calendar, your work and social calendar to life and looking at it at a distance and start planning it in. And that will also prepare you for menopause. Working with our cycle is also really preparatory for having, my business is called the Merry Menopause. And that's all about, women who really want to age well, who really want to be at the top of their game in their 50s, 60s and 70s. They're the kind of women that I work with. And one of the preparatory things that we can do is to get them to work with their cycle.
Absolutely love that. I mean, most people find burnout through collapse.
Yeah.
When their body couldn't take. Exactly. It's too late and their body couldn't take it anymore. But you've now somehow made it into a prevention as your core focus, especially for women in high pressure environments. So I guess my question to you, Joe, is what are the early emotional or even physical signs when someone is approaching that burnout that we often overlook or dismiss?
Yeah, it can start with, there's just that gut feel, that dread, that anxiety, sort of, they're like, silent symptoms. So they could also be mistaken for perimenopause. A lot of women will come into perimenopause, burn out, and that's going to exacerbate their menopause symptoms. A lot of the symptoms can be controlled mainly by stress, diet, and lifestyle. So, by understanding and working with your body and realizing this need to rest and also the signs that you're exhausted, that's going to, prepare you for a much easier perimenopause and menopause transition. So early signs, that gut feel, that dread, that low level anxiety, tearful, just the slightest little thing is going to trigger you, dreading going to work, brain fog, gut issues, an upset stomach, changes to your cycle. Our cycle responds to stress. So one real way of understanding stress is missing periods, skipping periods, periods coming together. Cortisol, another big hormone in our body that intertwines with the sex hormones. So really looking at our stress, managing our energy and preventing burnout, working with your cycle can stop all this happening. We're here to live our life. We have one life. We're here to live it. We're here to work and enjoy it. One of the ways that we can do that is understanding our bodies, empowering ourselves to understand our body. To prevent burnout, I'm all about, prevention rather than cure.
And that's why it is so on theme, because we are talking about preventing burnout and not just surviving from burnout.
Yeah, reconnecting. I think that's probably one of the simplest signs is when you feel really disconnected from yourself. when you feel disconnected from mind and body, you feel disconnected from the people around you, when you're struggling to make connections, when you're just retreating, your self-esteem really drops with burnout. So it's all, those signs. I suppose that would be the word, Sophie's disconnection. When you're starting to feel that disconnect from yourself and the world, that's probably a sign that you're entering into burnout. Thank you.
You've said that women can't lead because they're burning out. Now, I know in your experience, you've worked with so many women in events, academia, hospitality industries, full of women operators, but not enough female leaders instead. So what's going on in that system? Is the system failing us?
Yes. Globally, the system is failing us. The patriarchy is failing us. Misogyny, medical misogyny is failing us. Healthcare for women, under-researched, hormones under-researched. We have no studies on really how women's health, how we look in our 70s and 80s. The studies stop. They don't, things are changing, but kind of we don't have any long-term studies yet. Hopefully for your generation, there will be long-term studies as to how women age, because we age differently from men. We're not little men. But yeah, we are being failed and we are being let down at every angle, and we're being failed and let down with the whole AI revolution. I was at a wonderful conference about with the NHS about how AI and women's health, and actually the information that we feed into AI is going to project and how we care for women in the future and the research that's done. So yes, the system is failing us. I'm really passionate about how we have been failed over the years and how we continue to be failed. And the reason that women, we need more parity in senior leadership. We look at the news every day. We look at the men that are running the world. It's like we need some women up there. Why are there no women up there? Why are they not supported to sit in those positions of power? And it comes down, very simply to the fact that women's well-being is treated the same as men's well-being, and it isn't. We need to really think about menstruation. We really need to think about menopause. These are not illnesses. They're not choices. They are part of being a woman, and they don't just end at our fertility. We are women going into their 50s and 60s. Amazing things are happening with this generation. And even more so now that we have social media, it's very vocal about how wonderful it is to get older, and this sort of, this resurgence that you get later on in life. And we need to be talking to younger women. We need to be talking far more positively, and we need to be talking about the benefits of aging and how to age well, and how we incorporate that into our personally, how we take responsibility for that, but also how we're cared for in the workplace. And how do we retain women in their mid-40s to mid-50s as they go into their perimenopause transition? That's when an awful lot of women will leave the workplace because they are unsupported, they're not heard. And it's a travesty. So much talent is walking out the door. If you look at if anybody's listening, look at your business, look at the women in that business, look at the talent they have, look at the intellectual property that they have around your business. Look at the mentorship roles that they can have. Look at the influence they have. And it's like, can you really afford to lose that?
No, absolutely not. And you're right. They're slowly getting wiped out. If anything, I've seen more older men in leadership roles than I have seen older women in leadership roles.
Yeah. It's the way it is, Sophie, and it needs to change, and it's not changing fast enough. And I think one of the things that I can recognize is that we have to support women through their menopause transition. We really have to understand that midlife for women can be really, really hard. Men's testosterone declines. It starts declining from their 30s, and it's a very, 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 very gradual drop. So yes, men do have a hormonal change in midlife. But for women, the drop-off is far quicker. It's far more rapid, which is why we have these symptoms. Why we always have withdrawal symptoms from our estrogen and our progesterone and testosterone. Later life, once we stop menstruating, so once we're in postmenopause, like myself, kind of early to late 50s onwards, we get a backup supply of hormones from our adrenal glands. So these are two little glands that sit above our kidneys, and they produce cortisol. So this is the stress hormone, the fight or flight hormone, probably something you're very familiar with on this podcast and it's talked about a lot. But if we deplete our adrenals, if we're working too hard, if we're pushing too hard, if we're not managing our energy, we lose that backup supply of hormones that's so important to us in our life post-menopause. We just get these, little spurts. We go back to prepubescent levels. So all of these little things, these little tweaks to our lifestyle, looking after ourselves, looking at what we eat is really important. Movement is really important. Managing our stress is really important. We can't hand that over to somebody else. is something that we have to look after, and it's something we have to advocate. So if we're not getting the support we need, if we're not being heard, we need to advocate for ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Now, let's come into a part where we're going to talk about some hard truths here that will involve HR and the employers. I operate in this space, and I've unfortunately observed this behavior from employers over and over and over again, and yet nothing seems to change. So let's talk about the policy gap and the cultural silence. Because what I have found really disappointing in organizations is you've clearly had the experience in helping organizations write policies for menstruation or menopause and uncovered big issues like to get support, women often have to call it a disability. Now, I have seen that firsthand. I remember a time a couple of years ago when I was working for this financial services client of mine, and the role that I was playing was to actually reinvigorate, they were saying, right? The project was called Reinvigorating Our Policies to be a lot more accommodating to diversity. And part of the survey results that came back was women were asking for a policy to support them through menopause and menstruation. However, that was immediately knocked down because it was either going to fall under a disability or it didn't have space to actually be on a policy on its own. So I really struggled with that, right? And I personally have worked with clients who just basically dismiss these natural bodies of ours. And what is happening to us is clearly not a disability. I've had over and over conversations with them and I just couldn't get through. So that was a really awakening moment for myself. So in your experience, and obviously you've had some success in this experience, in this space, how would you approach it? How should HR approach this in the future?
Because looking after your midlife women or anyone in your organization who menstruates is the right thing to do. This is 51% of the world's population menstruate. They will go through menopause. That is a huge amount of women. And the other 49% of the population will pretty much experience it by proxy. So that's going to be a partner, a mother, a sister. It's a conversation that includes everybody. It isn't just for women in their 50s. Menopause isn't just about hot flushes, which is kind of what people seem to think. It's like, okay, if you have hot flushes, you're in menopause. It's not at all. It is a wide range of symptoms, most of them cognitive. The effects of estrogen on the brain are huge. So that low mood, anxiety, depression, there is, these silent symptoms that we can't see. They need supporting. Taking this out of your well-being and putting it separate. We're not asking for special treatment. It doesn't mean I'm not capable of doing my job. It might just mean I need some adjustments. When I present, I have to have notes. I can't stand up and ad lib and present like I used to. I need to have notes, and I call that out whenever I present. And it's like, this is just the knowledge is here. The experience is here. Just the ability to get it out of my brain at the right time so I can deliver a good presentation. I've lost that. So give me notes. So it's just about recognizing there are certain adjustments, and we do that for an awful lot, wide range of groups within an organization. So why not do it for menopause? And it helps retention. It makes your staff know that you understand. It will retain this wonderful talent that you have. But the cost of recruiting somebody, if they leave in their 50s, if they're in a senior management position, the cost of that is huge. How long it takes to onboard somebody, get them settled into the business. And if they enter your business and you're not supporting them, they're going to go. So you're going to start to see a cycle of brilliant women just, churning through your business. So do the right thing. It doesn't have to be a complicated document you can take from other wellbeing documents, but make it specific, make it standalone. Let everybody know where it is. Make it really accessible. People don't generally read policies. You're in HR, it's a boring document. I'm not going to sit down and have a cup of coffee and read policy. So alongside it, do some guidance. Do a menopause and menstruation guidance, a really lovely soft touch booklet, 10 to 12 pages. Send it to your graphics department, make it look nice, make it basic little handbook with basic information. So somebody in their 30s could, go and have a read of it and go, okay, get an understanding. A line manager who feels they feel they've got a member of their team who might be going through perimenopause or menopause can refer to it and get a basic understanding that can start a conversation, that can start a culture change. Move it away from acceptable workplace banter, that somebody in their 50s is going through menopause, and make it an important conversation and part of your cultural change in your business. And you will see results. You will see tangible results. And if you're recording it properly, like we said, you have to record it. I worked with an organization and I spoke to a woman there. She had to put down, she having the cognitive issues that are, very common in perimenopause. There was nothing on the sickness form to record that. So she had to put down mental health, which now means that she's now flagged in the HR system as having mental health. So not only does she have to register as a disability, she also had to register as mental health. And it's like, okay, so you're a woman going through a natural hormonal transition and you're being labeled as having mental health and being disabled. That's wrong, because you're neither. And it's infuriating. It's just, a couple of tweaks at the back end of your system. Now, I'm sure you've got somebody in tech who could easily adjust your system so women can honestly record why they might be absent or why they need to go to the doctor or why they need time off. And that is data. That gives you data about what's going on in your organization and how you can look after people, how you can spend your budget wisely to look after people. So it's gold. It's gold dust.
I totally agree with you, because let me just come back to the point around having a back end to, having to fix up the back end of your HR system. Actually, Joe, it's as simple as a toggle of a button.
Yep.
It actually is not complicated work. I think you're absolutely right to call out that employers only need to be aware and put together policies that recognizes something that is as natural as our menstrual cycle, and then actually have an understanding in how to accommodate these women in the workplace, because we're not asking for special or extenuating circumstances, right? We're not asking for excuses. We're not asking for anything other than recognition that this is natural.
Yeah. And, a lot of workplaces, rightly so, do an awful lot around maternity and paternity leave and returning to work. Not everybody is going to have a child, but every person in your organization who menstruates is going to, at some point, whether they're with your organization or not, but they will go through menopause. So this is something that's going to affect a larger part of your workforce than maternity leave and pregnancy. So you need to kind of start thinking about, okay, the impact of this on the business, and look at it at bottom line. Look at look at it as a metric, as something that you can measure financially, because it will be impacting your P&L.
I agree. Now, as someone who's been through burnout twice, I now realize that my body always knew before my mind did, right? Just like what you were saying, I shouldn't apologize for my body telling me something. Those were the signs. I didn't listen. I was too conditioned to perform, to prove, to push even harder than I ever have. And what if our recovery actually starts with relearning how to listen to our body? And I know you and I touched on this topic briefly when we first kind of got into this conversation, and not just to the loud screams of collapsing. Your physical body can't take it anymore. You're completely exhausted. You're withdrawn. You're completely disconnected with your body. Let's just put all of that aside. How do we start listening to the early whispers of our body asking for rest?
When you feel tired. It really is as simple as that. When you question yourself, am I tired because I've just had a really sugary snack and my blood sugar went from, hero to zero in an hour? Is that why I'm tired? Am I tired because I didn't have a good night's sleep because I got into bed and I looked at my phone till 1:00 in the morning? Start questioning why you're tired and really start understanding, okay, I need to take responsibility for why I'm feeling like I'm feeling. So I'm going to have good sleep hygiene. I'm going to watch what I eat. I'm not going to eat sugary snacks when I'm tired. We have to start owning our well-being. We're in a society, in a culture where we want quick fixes. Give me a pill, write me a prescription, give me some therapy, give me, I don't want to do the work, but I want to feel better. And actually, we need to start re-educating people on how important it is that they take responsibility for themselves, because it's going to depend how they age. And, we are living older, but actually the quality of life as we live older, that's really going to be important. So every decision that we make around managing our energy, managing our well-being is going to impact how we age. And I want to age well. I'm going to make decisions. And I should have been making decisions in my 20s and 30s about how I aged well, but I didn't. But now I think that information is seeping through a lot earlier. But we really need to be looking and taking responsibility for ourselves and our actions and stop expecting to be looked after by everybody else and that everything's going to be all right. It's like everything you put in your mouth, every time that you don't get up and have that walk, but just lie on the sofa, that's going to have an impact.
Absolutely. And for someone who's listening right now, who's pushing through the pressure, what's the one truth you want them to hear?
I suppose it's that. It's like, you've got to start owning it. But I think from a perspective of the work that I do, it's like, where are you in your menstrual cycle? Where are you in your menopause transition? So knowing what's happening with your hormones can help you make sense of how you're feeling, and also know that, these feelings are temporary. Our hormones fluctuate hourly, daily. But, if you're having a cycle with the way that you're feeling now is going to, in a few days, you're going to be feeling completely different, and that's completely normal. Perimenopause, menopause, slightly different. We stay in a certain part of our cycle without going into too much depth around the cycle, but our luteal phase, our premenstrual phase, that's, perimenopause is an extension of that, and it can last for a few years. But know that there are good times ahead, that this is just a phase that your body has to go through. It's part of that transition into the next phase of life, into what I like to call the age of opportunity. Our 50s onwards, there really is, it's not about giving up. It's not about, you might need to take a little pause, that pause in menopause. We might need to just slow down, adjust. There's a big shift in identity. There's a big shift in our bodies, how they look and how they feel. We need to work into that. We need to step into that. But, when we come into life post-menopause, I say it's that age of opportunity. And if we prepared ourselves by working with our cycle and all those stages, if we've come into perimenopause, not burnt out, not stressed out, if we've managed our symptoms, if we've made the changes that we're called to make, which for so many of us can be life-changing, then we will age well.
It's an age of opportunity.
Yeah.
I cannot say thank you enough, in advance for you to say that to me today, because I feel like I'm definitely in a cycle where I am feeling a little bit more emotional than I am.
Okay. Do you know where you are?
Usually.
Do you know where you are in your cycle, Sophie?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to share that?
I'm about 3 days before my period.
Okay. Well done for showing up today.
Yes. It's I can almost feel it taking my energy and taking
Yeah.
space from me already. But as you said, the more you recognize and the more you learn about your body, the more easy it is for you to actually just navigate.
Yeah. And, to allow your body, regardless of whether you ignore it or not, your body is going to cycle. So it's like anything. Do we work together or do I resist you? And if you look at any relationship that we have, when we work with somebody or something, when we work with it, it's a lot easier, it's a lot more enjoyable, it's a lot smoother. When we resist it, when we push back against something, it just gets harder and harder. So it's
Of
like, let's
course.
just lean into this. This is happening. And let's reframe it. Let's really start to work with it and see the gifts and the opportunities that come with each phase and look at what we can achieve with a lot less effort, prevent burnout and have a lot.
I love that so much. Now, thank you so much for today, Jo. You
A
have
pleasure.
been an absolute blast to tell us some of these hard truths. And I know it's really important for people who are still trying to learn about their body, or perhaps they have been, in an environment where they're conditioned to get stigmatized because of how, their bodies are reacting differently as compared to others. So I'm so thankful for not just for your honesty, but also saying out loud that we can reclaim what was never broken in the first place, which is our cycles, our rhythms, and our bodies. So, where can people learn more about your work, your leadership program, and follow your story?
Oh, thank you. Well, my website, themerrymenopause.com, and also Instagram at the Merry Menopause, and I'm Jo Fuller on LinkedIn. Yeah, lots of information there. Yeah, and thank you, Sophie. I mean, I'm really passionate about this work. I'm really passionate about women understanding they're not broken, especially when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. And I think with the rise in sort of the mental health conversation, especially with teens and younger women, it's about understanding the fluctuations in your cycle where you go from high to low is a really important conversation when we're talking about having healthy minds and healthy bodies for this next generation, as well as my own generation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you, Sophie.
If this episode resonated with you today, make sure to follow and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a conversation as important as this. The Burnout Detox Kit is here to make sure ambitious people like you recover from the burnout without losing themselves in the process. So if you know someone navigating burnout right now, workplace toxicity, even simply trying to hold it all together, share this episode with them. You never know who might need to hear it. I thank you for your courage today, and thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.